We're continuing our lesson today with the English settlement in the different regions, or the three groups of colonies. Yesterday we learned about the New England colonies, which were founded largely for religious freedom, although dissenters who did not practice that were kicked out. We also started with some of the southern colonies, where we talked about Virginia, which of course was saved by tobacco. However, the establishment of large plantations in Virginia began because of the headright method, which was the granting of land as payment for paying for yourself or others to travel to the New World. Today we're going to learn about the middle colonies, which the beginning of the middle colonies was Pennsylvania. Other middle colonies were New York, New Jersey, Delaware. As you can see, Connecticut was also one of the New England colonies. Yesterday we learned about the New England colonies. The New England colonies were mainly founded as a haven for religious groups persecuted in England. The two main groups that settled in the New England colonies were the Pilgrims, or the Separatists, and the Puritans. Both left England because they were persecuted. However, the Pilgrims struggled while the Puritans prospered. The Puritans prospered economically because they harvested the lumber of the great northern woods, used that lumber to build ships, and engaged in trade with those ships. Both groups had a form of democracy which would influence their idea to have self-government, and the Puritans, as well as the Pilgrims in some cases, exiled dissenters. The establishment of schools, especially in the Puritan community, was for the purpose of having their children be able to read the Bible. Once again, that establishment of schools was so the children could learn to read the Bible and establish religious conformity. Dissenters were exiled to other parts of the region. There's the lumber ships and the trade we're not showing, but there's the schools. Harvard was a Puritan creation. There's an exile being kicked out of a Puritan community. As a whole, for the New Englanders, they enjoyed religious homogeneity, a thriving economy based on trade, and a democratic government. Today's lesson is about mainly the middle colony of Pennsylvania and how it established the pattern for the middle colonies as a whole. Pennsylvania, like the southern colony of Virginia, was a proprietary colony, and the reason that it was founded and started was because of its proprietor, who has become quite famous today, and it is the reason that it is so named. Its proprietor was named William Penn. William Penn was part of a family that helped Charles II reascend the throne during I forget what it's called, but you learned it a couple years ago. Now, William Penn was the proprietor of Pennsylvania, and he had was part of a religious movement that was known as the Quakers. The Quakers also were a group of Protestants that were disagreeing with the Church of England. And William Penn sought to create a colony where Quakers were welcome. William Penn would become the governor and the proprietor of the land of Pennsylvania. Now, the Quakers as a whole had some interesting beliefs. The Quaker religion, which is Christian, but the traditions and practices are a little different. They believed in religious tolerance. So even though the Quakers would prefer that you practice their religion, they would tolerate your religion. The Quakers also, they had a system of beliefs which believed the following, which I am going to illustrate here with the body of a person that I'm going to draw, which doesn't look too pretty. The Quakers believed in this idea, and to illustrate this, I'm going to draw a light bulb in a person's chest. The Quakers believed in an idea of inner light. This was a differing idea than some of the beliefs in Europe at the time. They believed that all people had an inner goodness or an inner light. So this was why they were religiously tolerant of most people. They believed all people had an inner light. As such, the Quakers were very tolerant of all groups of people. This tolerance would lead to the middle colonies having great diversity of people among its inhabitants. The Quakers' belief in inner light also led to respect and good relations with Native Americans. Because, according to the Quakers, just because the Native Americans were born over here, they were not viewed as savages as they were from in some areas. They believed Native Americans were also born with that inner light. This inner light, once again, would lead to the middle colonies having great diversity of people in them. Now, William Penn, as the proprietor, also established democracy in the middle colonies, especially his colony of Pennsylvania. Democracy was evident in the middle colonies in the form of representative assemblies. And the middle colonies would, once again, because of the foundational ideas of the Quakers, that everyone has inner light, and therefore everyone has an inherent goodness, not many groups were excluded from settling in the middle colonies. The Dutch made their way to the middle colonies of New York. There were Irish, I believe, Jewish people made their way here. So as a whole, the middle colonies would become known for their great diversity. Economically, the middle colonies would do quite well because the middle colonies had good harbors where ports could be built and trading operations conducted, and fertile fields where they could grow grain and other things. This hint of the fertile fields should also perhaps awaken a thought in your brain about William Penn, a Quaker, and why that might be somewhat familiar to you. So the Quakers would grow a certain thing in these fertile fields. And that certain thing is definitely going to tip you off as to what that hint is. The middle colonies would make their money agriculturally by growing grains and wheat and other things. Because of this, the middle colonies became known as the breadbasket of the colonies, because they grew the grain that would feed the other colonies and be ground up into flour to make the bread. And that's probably saying, I know, grain, Quakers, you're making me remember Quaker oatmeal. Yes, that is William Penn on the picture of the Quaker oatmeal box. Going through the PowerPoint, many of the points will be revisited. So, there was a variety of Europeans in the middle colonies. The Dutch went to New York, Swedish to Delaware, English Puritans, and English Quakers in Pennsylvania. In all, a great diversity of people in the middle colonies. The Quakers were a group of religious dissenters who believed everyone had an inner light. They promoted religious tolerance and good relations with the natives in their region. By doing so, they attracted other groups to that region. The middle colony's greatest diversity had the greatest diversity of people and religions in British North America. Once again, William Penn, whose picture I will show you on the next page, I believe, was granted land by Charles II in a payment of debt that was owed to William Penn's family. Penn became a proprietor or moneymaker and was named the governor and could name the governor of the colony. Pennsylvania had a representative assembly or democracy, as did other colonies in that region. There's William Penn, the proprietor of Pennsylvania, who, as we've said before, was a Quaker, and that belief would influence the middle colonies and lead to their great diversity. The middle colonies were founded on the purpose of profit, and the region's economic prosperity rested on its good harbors and fertile fields. It became known as the breadbasket of the colonies. We are now going to learn about the South Carolina colony, and more about the southern colonies. The Carolina colony, part of the southern colonies, would follow the southern colony model. It would be a proprietary colony that was founded for the purpose of profit. Those who would make profit would be 8 men who the king, like William Penn, owed money to. These 8 men would be known as the 8 Lord Proprietors. These 8 Lord Proprietors would be granted the following lands as the Carolina colony. The Carolina colony was much bigger than modern South Carolina. Here is one picture of the grant in 1663, which was expanded in 1665. Here's a better picture of the enormous size of the Carolina colony. The 8 Lord Proprietors were granted the land that was all the way to the Mississippi River. Once again, why were they not granted any further? Yes, you know, the Mississippi River and all the land to the west was whose? Yes, it was France's. France claimed the Mississippi River. So, the land that the king could grant was the land to the east between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mississippi River. South Carolina was founded as a proprietary colony. South Carolina, of course, being part of the southern colonies. It was granted to 8 Lord Proprietors. These proprietors hoped to make money by charging rent on the land or a quitrent. We're going to get into more of this tomorrow, but when they were granted the land, they had to come up with a government to control the land. For this government or constitution that would establish the government, they hired a smart guy. That smart English guy was John Locke. And John Locke would write the Constitution of the Carolinas called the Fundamental Constitutions of the Carolina. This would include policies such as religious tolerance, which was designed to attract settlers. Here are the 8 Lord Proprietors that were granted the Carolina colony. You can see Edward Hyde, George Monk, Anthony Ashley Cooper, William Craven, Vice Admiral Sir George Carteret, Sir William Berkeley, John Berkeley, and Sir John Colleton. Here's another map of the Carolinas, which we're going to get into more detail with tomorrow. You can see that Carolina was the land between Florida, which was in the hand of who? The Spanish, and the Albemarle Sound. The charter also extended to the Mississippi River over here. Tomorrow we're going to learn more about the Carolina colony, which was a proprietary colony. Until then, thank you for listening. I hope you did well.